Welcome back to the Turbo Branding Show, where we help you ignite your growth by leveraging your brand to grow faster, easier, and more successfully. I'm your host, Sue Kirshner, and business owners, listen up. Today's guest, Regina Carey, is going to challenge you to ask a tough question. Are you still describing yourself, your business, and your value the same way you did when you started? Because you've changed. Your experience is deeper, your story is richer, and the woman or man behind that business is not who they were 5 or 10 years ago. So we're going to talk about repositioning your story, why letting go of who you used to be is actually a competitive advantage, and how grief, yes, grief, plays a surprising and underrated role in business growth. This one's going to stick with you, so let's get into it. Regina, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. So happy. I love being with you today.
Awesome.
I love having this conversation because I think it needs to be talked about more.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And I'm glad we can shine a light on that. So I'm excited you're here today to share your experiences, insights on repositioning your story. But first, let me tell my listeners a little bit more about you. Regina Carey is an executive coach, speaker, and passion instigator who has spent more than 30 years helping high-performing professionals rethink how they live, lead, and work. She partners with driven individuals, especially those navigating invisible challenges, to transform intensity into clarity, resilience, and momentum. Known for her bold presence and grounded insight, Regina creates spaces where deep thinking meets committed action. Her work blends strategic coaching with embodied awareness, helping leaders quiet the noise, trust their instincts, and move forward with intention. Clients often say she brings bold steadiness and spark, the rare ability to challenge assumptions while igniting meaningful, lasting change. I love that moniker, passion instigator. How did you land on that?
Oh my gosh. That is one of the coolest things. When I got into this business of being in business for myself, which is very foreign to me, by the way, as a special ed teacher,
Yeah.
is where I started. I worked specifically with a company when I decided to make a website that was filled with educators.
Mm.
And they got me, they understood where I was coming from. And one day, one of them popped in and said, I've come up with a title for you that I think's going to stick. And she said, Passion Instigator. Because every time you come in here to work with us, within the first 15 minutes, you're here. I feel so excited and like some fire has started. And, I have to remind people, I'm not a sex educator. This has nothing to do with passion in the bedroom, but absolutely the passion in our bellies, because for a lot of women, especially, I mean, this is where we create. Many of us are moms, and we know that feeling of having the stir in your belly when that baby just starts to move for the first time and you think something's wrong, but actually it tickles and there's life in there. And we have to remember that we are creators.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we snuff out our light, as life happens.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I love that you talk about that fire in your belly, the passion and what that means to you. Because, I do a lot of the same thing, but with organizations, because organizations can have a passion and a why. And that's what the brand reminds you of every day of what you're doing for your customers and the people that you serve. So, but you mentioned special education, and I would love to dig a little more into your professional journey and how it led into coaching. So give us a little bit more about your backstory.
My, I start off with saying I didn't realize how true it would be when I told people I was born in Defiance.
Hmm.
I was literally born in Defiance, Ohio. And the older I've gotten, the more I've taken on that personality of defiance. I've gone against everything that anyone has ever told me because I knew there was a different way. And so when I started out, I was told I couldn't be or do what I wanted to be and do because I didn't have the grades. I was told by a man that that was not going to work for me. What was my plan B? And, I think many, at least many of the clients I work with, were often told they couldn't do what they wanted to do. It wasn't going to make money. They didn't have the smarts. They weren't from the right upbringing. They weren't tall enough, thin enough, smart, whatever it is. And and so I went on that path for a while. And when I got an opportunity to get my master's at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, I jumped at it because it was free for one, and I wanted to know more. So I got out of teaching in that way that we know it, and it kept evolving.
Mhm.
And the beauty of that evolution was also that my husband was in professional training. And so we moved. And I have a kid born in all the states. I have three kids. We've lived in three states, a child in every one. And I was always pregnant and packing to
Mm.
move to the next place. As a result, I was pivoting before the pandemic. I was always looking for another way to use my degree in education to make a bigger difference, hit a wider audience. And when I finally decided to start my business, it was because I got tired of justifying my existence,
Hmm.
which is what I had to do in academia every year because I didn't have a PhD.
Yeah.
And I knew going back to school and getting a PhD was not in the cards for me, not in this lifetime, at
Yeah.
least not now. And so launching out was a real leap because I had not one iota of business training. But it's been an adventure. I say mine sort of looks like the family circus when Billy goes to the store and doesn't quite make it.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about you and I have talked before this, and you say you help women reposition their brand, reinvent themselves with new opportunities. But how did you do that for yourself? Was the process of doing it for yourself led you to how you can do it for others? And let me just ask you the big $1 million question. What is your brand today?
Yeah, I guess I should have thought about that one before we talked. I had a mom who was a therapist, and she used to tell me how much she learned from her clients.
Yeah.
And, we teach that which we must learn. I've always loved that quote. And so along the way, I've learned from so many people. And I also realized the importance of having a coach myself.
Mm,
The most valuable piece of that is that they have always seen in me what I could not see in myself. And I don't know about you, but I'm somebody who does the thing and keeps on moving. I'm like, Tasmanian devil. So
right.
when I accomplish something, it's like, yeah, I did that. Next, there's a line in a Pitbull song that says, so ahead of myself that every day is yesterday. It's like you're going and going and going, right?
Yep.
And to slow down and have somebody say, look at what you did. Look at this thing that you've built. And so having a coach was vital for me.
Okay.
I'm known as the Queen of Action. Really, that's my brand. I help people with their weight problem. I often say that. What are you waiting for? And there's always wonderful excuses. They're beautiful, and we've heard them all. And still, we move forward.
Yep.
And I learned from a great coach, a couple of them, that everything is an experiment. And I liked the idea of doing that
Yeah.
because in experiments, you can make mistakes and then figure out how to do it differently next time. It sounded better to me than, taking this great challenge or goal and then failing. And I was never a really good student. So failure felt really like I felt that in my body. And this is a different way of looking at it. So, yeah, moving forward, and I've learned to really slow down, which is new to me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now, you and I talked a little bit before we jumped on here too about one of the gifts I think that you bring people is clarity, right? So clarity about either who they are, clarity about where they're going. Like you said, instigating their passion and things like that. But, you know, let's riff a little bit about this because someone once told me, "Oh, unless you can prove the ROI, clarity is not something that you should tout as what, the value that you offer." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" But let's talk about it. What is the value of clarity?
Oh, the thing that comes to mind first is clarity is kindness. When there is confusion, we expend a lot of energy. And one of the tenets of my coaching is teaching people energy management, not time management. We're not trying to manage time. It's
Yeah,
not manageable, but our energy is. And when we are not clear on what's important to us, then our energy is just everywhere because
absolutely.
we've been taught growing up in our family of origin, this is important. This is what we do, what we don't do. We've been taught by our faith communities. We've been taught by our educational communities, by our societal community, what's important. And we've always said, okay, got it, got it, got it. So one of the first things I do with clients is get clear on what their values are.
Okay.
Because when we're clear on what's important, then we make decisions more easily. No more shooting on ourselves, no more guilt.
Yeah.
Because when we know what's important and make our decisions based on that, we're less likely to look over our shoulder and say, oh, I wish I could have done that, or I really should be doing that instead of this. I feel so guilt. No,
Yeah.
people stop using the word guilt. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? I think people appreciate being around others who are clear, clear on who they are, clear on what they're doing, clear on their time and what they dedicate it to, clear on their priorities.
Yeah. I agree. I love that. I love the way you say that. So, yeah, because that's something I talk about my clients with, especially is, you're talking about, coaching people and getting clarity. But then I look with organizations and the leader has to be clear. So that is a people
Huge.
aspect. But then here's the deal. When you have an organization, you have to be able to communicate and get everyone on board to go the same place that you're going or to see what you are seeing, right? And especially like I work with businesses that are starting to scale, it is so easy to get distracted by shiny objects. Oh, a client asked me to do this, let's do that. It's so, a customer said, "Hey, could you do this for me?" Yeah, let's investigate that and things like that. And like you said, where is your energy going as an organization? And I think, brand can be that shining light that helps a founder, helps an organization keep moving forward towards, like you said, where we need to go in order to grow or to scale and to get, achieve the vision that we have. So I love the way that you describe that.
Mm, thank
Yeah.
you.
So I know you work with, a lot of women over 50. You're coaching them and they may be pivoting. They may
Mm.
be starting over, they may be taking an opportunity to try something different or build a business. And you've talked to me a little bit about coaching them on letting go.
Mhm.
What are they letting go of? And why is letting go so scary
Mm.
when it comes
Well,
to make change?
that grief right there, that grief. And an easy example of this is letting go of the comfort, for one, that comes with that consistent paycheck,
Hmm.
letting go of the structure of a workaday world job because structure is important. But we all had a little taste of that during the pandemic of the
Right.
work from home mentality and how do you do laundry and take care of the kids and also focus on your business.
Yeah.
And it's challenging. But whenever we begin to do growth work, we shift because we learn things and we start to see things differently. And one of my favorite quotes is, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are.
Hmm.
And so our perspective changes. And then my disclaimer at the beginning is, look, the good, the bad, the ugly, it's all going to happen because you said yes, because you're ready for the growth. And what I see is that we have to let go of relationships because they're no longer where we're at.
Hmm.
They might look at us, these are the people who look at us and say, wow, must be nice to not work, an everyday job. I got to get up and geez, aren't you the one? Who are you to do that? What does your
Right.
husband say? What does your fan? These are the people who are not on the bus with us right now. We have to pull off to the side and let them off and say, we're going to go around the block a few times. You may or may not be getting back on.
Yeah.
But friendships, we have to let go of those. Ideas of maybe what we thought our future was going to be, got to let go of those. And the beautiful thing is when you choose to do it, as opposed to becoming a widow or being fired or getting divorced, and you have this acute event happen where you're forced, it's a different perspective. And you're choosing this. And so the grief feels like, ah, maybe I'll just push this down. I can't deal with this right now. And it's important for especially us as women to address the grief, to feel the sadness. And one of the things that I use, and I brought this to show you, is an emotion wheel. Now,
Yeah.
these are a dime a dozen. You can find them all over the place, particularly uncomfortable emotions. Because I once had a client that anytime she talked about how she felt, she was either frustrated or exhausted.
Yeah.
Those were the two things she said. And anything else in here, guess where she went when she felt it? The refrigerator, the
Mm,
pantry,
yeah.
and didn't know really what to do with those feelings. And so learning to identify how we're feeling, we can move through that emotion in 90 seconds.
Hmm.
And yeah, if anybody wants to talk more about that, happy to have a conversation. But it's really important, and recognizing that anytime we are shifting, we are letting go. We have to grieve that part of us
Right.
in order to move forward. And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
The talk about ROI, the return on that investment is priceless.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And, I was reading, I think it was about a month ago or whatever, that one of the largest groups that are starting new businesses are women over the age of 50. Now, whether that's because they retire or, were laid off or are just taking time to say, you know what, now it's my time to do something different or to
Yes.
follow my passion or things like that. So
It's
I love that. And I love how, you can help them with deciding, well, as you start your business, with any founder or any startup, the brand is the core values or it's the personality of the founder. And whether you stop and investigate that on day one and figure out what that means, or as you start to actually build maybe a business and start to grow, you need to transfer those values and that personal brand to the organization and being able to. So I love your idea about, working with a coach, discovering who you are, figuring out, your core values, your identity, your personal brand,
Mhm.
transferring it to the organization. So that's an area where I think, what you do is absolutely critical to help, women figure this out as they launch and take on this new role of being a business owner or an advisor or whatever they're going to do as their next step. And even men have to go through this
Yeah.
same thing. They may do it differently, but they have to go through it. But here's another thing that I found that's very interesting as well is I work with a lot of companies and a lot of, women founders who are at the end. They're selling. They
Mhm.
got the exit strategy. They achieved the goal of being able to build something but now what? Now who are they? And you talked about grief a little bit. It's like, well, how do you relinquish control? How do you suddenly realize that something you built is not yours anymore? And then the more important question is, well, now what? Now, what am I going to do next? Maybe you were able to sell your business at 50, 55. Are you done? Are you now going to move on to something new? Are you going to build something new? But all of these questions, I love the space that you play in.
It
Um,
is a lot of fun.
yeah,
But and like think about parenting, you
yeah,
know? Our whole goal is to get them out and to help them be independent. And when they leave, it's sort of like exiting your business. But are you really ever done? No. Parenting goes on forever. Your creativity and your desire, that passion to build things is still with you.
yeah,
So where do you want to use that superpower next? And the truth is, maybe you're exhausted.
yeah.
Maybe building, scaling and selling during this critical perimenopause, menopause time in your life has completely burned you out. That's okay too. Let's figure out now, what are we going to look at? Maybe it's time
Right,
to actually focus on your health.
right,
Go to all the doctor's appointments you haven't gone to.
right.
I am continually amazed and concerned about how many women are not making time to do the proactive healthcare that is needed. It's more and more challenging too, though,
Hmm.
in getting into a doctor or a nurse practitioner, but it's important, especially during that 35 to 55, that frame of time, to make sure that you're getting what you need because yeah, you might be exhausted, angry, you don't know who you are anymore, you cry a lot. I just saw a comic say something like the only two mammals that go through menopause are women and killer whales. And she said, my guess is they weren't killer whales until they went through. And I
Until
love
they,
it's like,
yes,
yes,
yeah,
thank goodness we change and evolve, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Thank goodness my kids are getting sick of me. I want them to move out. It's okay. And we
Yeah.
laugh too. We gotta remember how important a sense of humor is
Oh,
because
absolutely.
our bodies are changing every single day, you
Right,
know?
right. No, it's funny. I want to build on something you've mentioned here, talking about pivoting and talking about things like that. Is earlier you mentioned helping people find their core values, right?
Yes.
And when I work with organizations, which are made up of people, but when I work with organizations, I like to remind them that, they're like, oh, well, we're rebranding, we're pivoting, we're going into a new direction and all this kind of stuff. We have new growth opportunities. That's all great. But
Hmm.
here's the thing I want to get across, and maybe you'll agree when it comes to personal branding too about is you talked about core values and helping them find your core values. When I work with an organization, one of the things I like to say is you can rebrand and you can pivot and go in different directions, but the core brand promise, the why you started the organization, that doesn't change. The brand promise never changes. How it shows up might be different. How you deliver on it can definitely change and pivot, and transition and things like that. But I always like to, and they're like, oh, well, we're rebranding, we're changing our tagline, we're doing this, we're doing that. That's fine. But make sure you don't deviate from the brand why, the promise that you make for everyone that interacts with you, because then now you don't have a strong brand. Or you've created a new brand when you thought you were still working off the old one. And I don't know if you see that when you work and coach with people in their personal brands too, is that there's transition, there's change, there's growth, there's different ways that you show up. But at your core, that DNA of who you
Hmm.
are is still the same, right?
Yes. I often joke that I caused the pandemic because right before it started, I had my group of women and I posed this scenario. I said, I want you to imagine that tomorrow you wake up and everything as you know it, gone,
Yeah,
done. You don't have your job. You don't have your family. You don't live where you live. You're out in the middle of nowhere and you have never experienced this before.
yeah,
Who are you? What do you want to go out and do in the world?
yeah,
You don't have any other responsibility. What's at your core? What's in your heart? What have you always wanted to do? And lo and behold, we sort of experienced that.
Yeah.
I think that we are all here with this innate desire to make a difference.
Yeah.
Every entrepreneur I've ever met wants to make a difference in the world with their ideas.
Yep.
So, what is it about? Twyla Tharp in her book, Keep It Moving, I love this woman.
Yeah.
She talks about it being a pledge. And I never thought about this, but it's like a pledge is different than a goal or a value, something you're going to reach.
Yeah.
It's something you wake up ready to do every day, knowing that the work will never be done, but that today you're going to do your damnedest to get to meet your pledge that you
Right.
said, this is why I'm here in the world.
Right.
And I thought that is just really wonderful.
That is wonderful. Yeah.
And
No, I love that. And I've worked with, again, equating it back to larger organizations is, I had a CEO that I had worked with at one point and I just loved. We created this card for him that on one side was the core values, on the other side was the brand promise. And they used it to help make decisions and keep that clarity and keep moving towards the growth goal. So at the end of every meeting, he would throw the card on the table and he would say, okay, the decision we just made, are we adhering to our core values?
yes,
And are we delivering on the brand promise with this decision? If we're not, why are we even talking about this? And let's start over. And I love that because we never do that as people, right?
hmm
We never walk around with a card that has our core values on it, but again, if you're an advisor, solopreneur, entrepreneur just getting started, or an organization who has a lot of people and moving parts and things like that, is to stop every now and then and say, are we meeting that pledge? Are we meeting that brand promise? Are we delivering on what we said we wanted to deliver?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny you said because when you said we don't walk, I was thinking my clients do. It's the first thing we do when they determine those core values. They are on note cards. We
Yeah.
are so visual. We need to be reminded.
Yeah.
And we've got to know those values like we know our phone number or,
Right.
anything else in our life. They're going to change, but right now, you know, these are what are important to me. And I often say if you don't do your core values, if you're not used to it, I would say start off doing it twice a year, every
Hmm.
6 months. When there is an event like a death, a birth, a move, a job, it's time to redo them. And
Yeah.
so because things absolutely what you want to focus on shifts.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you, let's go on to a different topic here a little bit is,
Sure.
from your perspective, as someone who coaches women through these pivots, and especially women, over the age of 50 who may be onto their second, third, or even fourth stage in life, what do they have that young entrepreneurs often don't? And is that something that they should be leveraging as part of their brand?
Right. Instead of trying to compete with the younger ones and
Trying to
TikTok and
compete
all
with
this
it
stuff.
or downplaying. I meet so many women who are like,
Mm,
I have to hide how old I am because then I'm unemployable and
mm,
things like that. And that's a lot of reason why women over 50 go into owning their own businesses because they feel like the value that I have built
yeah.
is not appreciated, for some reason in maybe a larger organization. But what do they have that's different than a young entrepreneur has when they're starting their own business?
They earned authority, perspective. You know, we've been through some stuff. One of my best friends is 92, and she sits with her friends at the assisted living, and she's independent at 92. And she'll sit around and she say, I remind them we do this cheer on the count of three. We know some stuff, we've been through some life and we've navigated relationships and maybe childbirth and child rearing, different jobs. We've run our households. Some of us have been community leaders, volunteers. I mean, we've been with a lot of people. We've made a difference. Wherever we went, we've made a difference. And we've 100% overcome all the challenges. We've survived them. And if you would have told me at, I don't know, 12 years old, when I was told I couldn't do what I wanted to do, that this was going to be what I lived through, oh, I would have gone running from the building. No way. Because we never quite know if we're going to be prepared for what life is dishing up. And yet, here we are. And so, your brand at this age is as rich as the depth of your life experience. You don't question yourself as much, stand in that power. And that's why a lot of the work I do is very somatic. We use our bodies. One of the things that I give to my clients is what I call a posture stick. It's a 3/4 inch PVC pipe, about 2.5 feet long.
Yeah.
And if you don't have one, just unscrew your mop handle, your broom handle, whatever, the
Yeah.
rake, and you put this behind your back and loop your elbows through it. It always cracks my back when I do it.
Hmm.
This is good. See, you just sat up taller.
Yeah.
This is good posture. And between our phones, our computers, and many women I work with maybe were a little more large chested when they were younger. So they learned to hunch over because they didn't want to be picked on. This, I mean, I've used this, and when women put it on, which is essentially what you're doing, some of them have gone to tears because they didn't realize what standing up straight could do for them.
Sure.
This is powerful. And when we are in good posture and we are grounded and use our bodies sometimes to help influence our brains, Amy Cuddy did the research on power posing. If it works for you, use it. It's really amazing. I
Yeah.
once lowered my heart rate by power posing for 2 minutes because I was going into a really important meeting and I was terrified. My heart was racing and I got it down 20 points in 2 minutes, 20 beats,
Yeah.
just by using my body.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's important that at this age we learn how to stand in our power, even if we were never taught. And when
Yeah.
people say, well, I'm just hardwired that way, or oh, that's just me, or I'm a people pleaser, we do not have permanent personalities.
Yeah.
We can change whenever we decide to.
Love that. Love that. All right, we're getting close to the end here, and I have two questions that I would really like to explore with you a little bit more. But the last one related to what we've been talking about, building brands and things like that, is you touched on grief earlier, and it was a new concept to me, this idea about grief. But when you stop and you think about it, anytime change occurs, there is a moment of grief, right? But it never gets discussed that way in business. So why does grief matter so much in the context of building or rebuilding a brand? And what happens when business owners just don't sit with the grief? They keep pushing it down or ignoring it, or as you said, you have this action and you keep moving on.
Work and identity are so closely linked. And many of us in this age group grew up with parents who were hardworking, boots on the ground. If we fell down, it was always like, get up, brush it off, keep going. We were taught work ethic by these hardworking parents. Many of them were born into huge families, and work is what they knew. Work is how they got validated. Good job, you got that project done, or finished fixing the lawnmower, whatever it was. When when we start to pull apart who are we versus what do we do, that in and of itself is a grieving experience. You mean I don't have to always be doing things in order to be valuable? Correct. And grief requires space, and we're so distracted. We always have things to do. I don't think anybody in our industry, the people we touch and work with, I don't think anybody's bored. there's always the next thing.
Hmm.
So, in order to actually work with the grief and figure out who we are apart from anything, we have to slow down. And when we feel that, I remember my dad used to say, you know what? I'm afraid if I started crying, I would never stop. And that was indicative of his generation, of how he grew up. He grew up on a farm and it was really hard. And that's the importance of having trusted people, people you can be with that you don't have to perform in front of, who sit with you. I will work sometimes with clients in on mute. I mute myself and let them talk nonstop for 45 minutes. And then I ask questions. And often people are not listened to. They're not heard for an amount of time like that, where they're just really listening to what they're having, what's bubbling up. And especially with women, so many ahas, so much awareness happens because the truth is, it's all inside. And so is the grief. And we have to move through it,
Hmm.
and it will lighten us. Because when we keep pushing down grief, truly, we get sick. That's where backaches, disease, cancer, migraines, it
Yeah.
turns into something because grief also holds energy.
Hmm.
So addressing it's okay. Find your person to help you move through it. And I think nature can be a great way to start. Walk into nature for a little bit.
Yeah.
Spend 10 minutes under the trees and
Right.
just see what happens.
Right. Now that's interesting. And yeah, and it was something that intrigued me because it was something that I spoke about on a podcast with Jennifer Fonderve. She helps companies, deal with mergers and acquisitions. And she was talking about the first time she was ever in a situation where the company that she worked with was acquired. She's like, and one thing that the acquiring company didn't take into consideration was the loyalty and love the employees had for the brand,
Right?
for the company. And now all of a sudden you wake up one day and it's like, oh, we're changing the name. Culture's different today. We're now, we're theoretically bigger and better after this, acquisition. But she goes, no one gave the employees the time to grieve the loss
Yes.
that for the relationship and the loyalty that they had built with the brand of their organization. And it's just yeah, it's hard and there's so much grief in business. And again, we don't label it that way. It's like your business fails. Do you take the time to grieve? And like you talked about, how do you as the founder separate it from your identity? And then other areas where even just, we tried to launch this new product or service and it didn't work. Let's grieve
Mhm.
it for a moment. Let's talk for a second about how much time, energy, and passion went into it,
Yeah.
and it didn't work, and it's okay. And that's what it gets back to again is organizations are full of people, and people have emotions and ties to the brand, to the company, to the people they work with. And I love that you talk about, when you're moving on or if something has happened, you need to take that space. And organizations need to give their people the space
Yeah.
to really understand the grief and what it means and mourn something that you had an attachment to. But now let's
Yeah.
move on. Now something new and exciting is about to happen, right?
Exactly.
So
Yes. Beautiful.
wonderful. Wonderful. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. I love talking with you, Regina, and talking about all the, brands are about emotions, personal branding is about emotions. And I love that we have hit on just so many emotions here today and, how people within organizations or people on their own who are transitioning, starting something new, have to come to grips with the power emotions have. So
Yeah.
love all that. I would love to ask you as one final question. I'd like to ask every one of my guests if they would nominate a small business who
Mm.
you think has a great brand or is just, doing an amazing job with delivering on their message, because I do want to give a shout out to companies who are doing it well.
I have lived in Michigan for almost 26 years now. And one of my all-time favorites, I send it to my clients, I send it all over the world. It's Cravings popcorn.
Mm.
My friend Chad has been through some life as well. But like you said, his core promise of bringing you great popcorn is gluten-free. It's so diverse and beautiful, and he has shifted his brand time and time again as he has grown. It's been a great thing to watch. It's like the Meryl Streep of popcorn. Like she just keeps getting better.
Yeah.
And I love being able to share, and be just weird. I'll do a little note like you popped into my head today and I had to share some of my favorite, food with you. And who
Yeah.
doesn't love popcorn? So
Right.
yeah, go to cravingspopcorn.com. You'll see all the fun and love he puts into everything.
Love that. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Regina, thank you so much for spending time with me today and sharing your journey and your philosophy and how you coach women and entrepreneurs and facing tough emotional decisions. But if any of our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, where can they find you?
Queenofaction.com. I still can't believe I got that. Yes, queenofaction.com, and it's the easiest way to reach out. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, excellent. Well, thank you, Regina, again for being here. I really appreciate it.
You are so welcome, and I hope that everybody makes it a strong day. Bring a little sunshine into this gray day.
Oh, yeah. Sunshine would be lovely.
All
Awesome.
right.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you. And thank all of you listeners for joining us on this episode of the Turbo Branding Show. I hope you've been inspired to ignite your growth by leveraging your brand. And if you enjoyed it, I'd love it if you could help me build a strong brand following for this show. Please share this episode and be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. Thank you, and stay tuned for the next episode.